Welcome to the Official Jets Podcast. Eric Allen here at One Jets Drive, joined by Ethan Greenberg. We're going to get into free agency right now. It is Thursday. The NFL league year actually commenced on Wednesday. So if you're listening to this after Thursday afternoon, there could be a move or two that Joe Douglas has made. With that being said, we got to get to some news. And later on in the podcast, we're going to give you a little bit of light, a window to what's been going on here at One Jets Drive today, because we want to speak into all the new Jets, including Tyrod Taylor. And Tyrod Taylor, I got a chance to sit down with him. But let's start with Greens. Ethan Greenberg in the house. Ethan, from your perspective, what's this day like in terms of, let's take people behind the scenes?
Oh, sure.
As far as the guys actually coming in, they've signed their contracts, and then what happens from a content perspective?
I think it's kind of like hurry up and wait a little bit, because the guys that come to the facility, they have an itinerary, and they have to, whether it's speak to coaches, Joe Douglas, personnel staff, take medicals, sign contracts. Like, there's so much that goes on that we don't see. And then we wait, and then those guys come to the studio that we're recording in right now. We interview them, whether it's podcast, whether it's one-on-one, whatever it is, get a little FaceTime, then get up on out of here.
Joe Douglas has been active on all fronts since last Sunday. He resigned 2 potential UFAs off the bat, and Chuck Clark and Greg Zuerlein. He agreed to terms with a couple of his RFAs, and Kenny Yeboah and Jake Hansen. He went the UFA route for Tyrod Taylor, John Simpson, and Javon Kinlaw. He even made a trade for Morgan Moses. Then there was the reported restructuring today of linebacker C.J. Mosley. There are also 2 additions to that list, including Thomas Morstead. That happened throughout the week. And then the big defensive tackle from Arizona as well. Go ahead.
Lucky Fotu.
Fotu actually has a Jets connection because he played collegiately at Utah, and his defensive line coach was?
Sione Puha.
So we're going to have to talk to him about Lucky. But with all that being said, what do you think about what's been done here from Joe attacking every possible avenue, and also with this reported restructuring of C.J. Mosley, and also DJ Reed's been quite active on social media as well, so maybe there's something there. I don't know if he's been telling us something, but I don't think the Jets are done.
I don't think they're done either. I think a lot of like cap analysts, like we've talked to Brad Spielberger from PFF in the past, and guys like him, and who really take a look at the numbers. When you look at restructuring, a couple guys had mentioned, do you extend someone like DJ Reed now to try to free up more cap space this year?
Yep.
And I think that we kind of saw that with CJ Mosley, who this was, I believe, the last year of his contract, and he gets a 2-year deal reportedly in terms of the restructure, which frees up some more money for the Jets this year to probably make more moves, whether that's free agency, the draft, whatever the case may be. But I think that Joe Douglas has, I think Jets fans were a little antsy early in the negotiating window, which happened 2 days before free agency began. But I think when you look at the whole picture of what he's done, I think you have to be happy. You bring back, to your point, Zuerlein and Morstead, who were both essentially weapons for the Jets. Both of those players won the Jets games in 2023. Chuck Clark is interesting because I think that he was such a versatile piece in Baltimore. We just never really got to see it last year because he tore his ACL. Then you add some big boys up front in terms of Morgan Moses and John Simpson and Javon Kinlaw and Lucky Fotu. Like, the Jets right now, going into the offseason, I think a lot of people would say you're looking at the positions in which he filled.
So let's go right there. Perfect transition. Segue, as we like to call in the business. Jets enter the offseason with needs at offensive line, backup quarterback, wide receiver. Then defensively, you'd start at defensive tackle and safety. Let's go to offensive line first. What do you make of the moves of Simpson and then Morgan Moses returning for his second stint with the Jets?
Well, I think Simpson's really interesting because just speaking to him and doing some research, he was the first one to say, like, he didn't quite have the confidence he has now when he got cut by Las Vegas.
Yep.
Then he kind of refound himself in Baltimore, and he was in a left guard competition. He wins the job, then he gets a little payday, comes here, and I think that you can see it when if you have, like, I keep saying this, if you have highlights as an offensive lineman, like if you're laying people out, you're probably doing something pretty good, and he's a tone setter. So I think from that perspective, I think you have to like it, especially like it's a free agency. It's hard to get, I would say, team-friendly deals with good players, but based on the reported numbers out there compared to what some of his offensive line counterparts at guard received, seems to be like a Jets-friendly deal. And then with Morgan Moses, he was a Jet, and he was great.
Yep.
And he seems to be great for Baltimore. Frankly, I'm not quite sure why Baltimore was so okay with letting him go. And some people have said that on Twitter. And I think if you're a Jets fan right now, you think about where this offensive line could hypothetically be. Like left tackles, I would imagine, is a question mark. Left guard, you would imagine Simpson. Tippmann, right guard, let's say AVT for all intents and purposes. And then Morgan Moses. I mean, you're shaping up to have a pretty nice starting five who get after it, are agile, and are tone setters.
Well, AVT's the chess piece. He could play left tackle. You can play all four of those spots on the line. The only spot that you're probably not going to put him at would be center. You're trying to find a permanent home. I'm just wondering if the permanent home is right guard, and if there is a move on the horizon. Again, Thursday afternoon. I guess it's a little bit after noon right now. It's in the 12 o'clock range, either in free agency or the draft. Also, you got some depth pieces there. Carter Warren, Max Mitchell, Wes Schweitzer, of course. Schweitzer.
Yeah, it's a tongue twister.
Yeah,
also, just I can't imagine what it's like for some of the Adam Schefters of the world, Ian Rappaport, Mike Garafolo, Tom Pelissero, like the insider guys. Like every time my phone buzzes because I have their tweet notifications on, like I get like a little jittery and I feel like I need to check it in case something happens. I can't even imagine what those guys are like right now.
I think there's a mindset change going on here for the Jets as far as what they want to do up front along the offensive line. You talked to Simpson. I just feel like they want to get a little bit grimier, nastier, set the edge. And there's guys in the past who've done some good things for the Jets, no doubt about it. But, I mean, when you're talking about Simpson and Morgan Moses, those are guys that are going to get after you. And also, I think that what we've seen in the past from Aaron Rodgers is that, yes, he can do anything, but he's especially effective with the play-action game. And the Jets have one of the best running backs in the National Football League in Breece Hall.
Yeah, they do. And I think that if you're Breece Hall, you got to be really happy about this. Obviously, fans are going to say, oh, this is great for Aaron Rodgers. It's also great for Breece Hall. I mean, you take a look at Pro Football Focus. John Simpson had 9 big-time blocks. I'm not quite sure what that means, but big-time blocks, you'd imagine that's a good thing. And he has highlights of laying dudes out, and that ranks second among guards. And then Morgan Moses, I believe, had like the 3rd best run block grade on Pro Football Focus this past year among tackles. So I think basically, to your point, the Jets are getting a little grimier. If they really start to attack the running game with Breece Hall, I mean, you give Breece Hall a sliver of daylight, and he's getting a decent chunk of change. You give him a hole, we see what happens there. Like, to me, I'm thinking about that Denver run from this past season. Like, he had a gaping hole to run through, and that ended up in a touchdown. And we've talked about it so much. Like, he is so strong that if he really gets a full head of steam or a couple of yards of steam, it's going to be really difficult for defenses to bring him down.
Jets aren't done along that offensive line. Let's go to backup quarterback. We knew that was on their radar starting in the offseason as far as veteran quarterback was concerned. They gave Zach Wilson and his team permission to seek a trade. Tyrod Taylor, most recently with the New York Giants the last couple seasons, the Jets make a move there to get a very capable backup quarterback.
Yeah, I think that if you're a Jets fan, you're obviously very familiar with Taylor because the Jets played him this past year a little bit with the Giants. They played him against the Browns, the Texans. Like, I think that if you're a Jets fan, what you want, well, first of all, you don't really want to see your backup quarterback on the field because you want Aaron Rodgers to be healthy. But if for whatever reason Taylor needed to come in, I think you'd feel confident that he could not only play well, but win the football game. The way that this team is structured where the defense is so good, you add some pieces up front like we're talking about, I don't think the Jets are done either. Whether that's and then
It
we haven't
sounds
even
like the
talked about
ticketing team
draft.
is not done either, because there's a lot of noise here and a bell just rung. So
I will say, like, let's take them behind the scenes. Like, there's a probably less than 5 feet outside of the studio to both of our rights. There's this bell, and if you make a deal, you ring the bell, and the bell's ringing right now. Maybe they're excited about Tyrod. Tyrod.
Excited about the New York Jets in 2024. So very capable backup quarterback. I can't believe he's entering year 14 already. With that being said, he's a guy who's still T-Mobile. And one of the most accurate long ball throwers that I've seen in the league for a long time. So listen, you're in capable hands if Rodgers can't play. Now, if Rodgers can't play, you're hoping for it's just a couple games. I don't even want to think beyond that.
Of course.
All right, so you have a really seasoned quarterback room, and maybe you add a young guy to the mix on day 3 of the draft. The Jets have 3 compensatory selections. We'll get to that later. So let's flip it to the defensive side of the ball. A lot of movement defensive tackle. Starting with Kinlaw. The connection there with Robert Saleh, former first-round pick of the San Francisco 49ers back in 2020. So Saleh knows exactly what he's getting his hands on. And then you don't just stop there. Fotu comes in, big body. It's like 6'4", 6'5", 335.
Mm-hmm.
So you're thinking about that guy who can come in and be a run plugger and occupy space, and a younger version.
So I think with Kinlaw and Fotu, these are athletes. I mean, you talk about Fotu specifically. He grew up playing rugby, and the Athletic put out this article on him that sheds a little bit of light about his upbringing and the hardship that he had to deal with. I would suggest to read that if you want like a glimpse or peek behind the curtain in terms of who Fotu is. But on the field, like, this is an athletic defensive tackle. Like Al Woods, I think this is essentially the Al Woods type replacement, like the run stuffer. Fotu is more athletic than Al Woods is, especially at this point in both of their respective careers. Woods coming off a big injury, an Achilles injury at the twilight of his career, where Fotu's coming off his rookie contract with the Cardinals. So I think the upside is there. And I think if you're a Jets fan, you have to kind of believe in Jeff Ulbrich and this defensive coaching staff that they're going to get the best out of these guys. Solomon Thomas, to your point, or someone you mentioned, he had a career year in sacks in this defense last year. Same thing with Quentin Jefferson, who reportedly agreed to terms with the Browns.
Right.
So I think if you're a fan, like Javon Kinlaw, number 14 overall pick, you might be thinking, well, he didn't maybe play out the way that a lot of 49ers fans were hoping. This guy, I mean, I don't know if you saw him today. He was in the cafeteria downstairs. He is so long and so broad, and you would imagine that Aaron Whitecotton, the defensive line coach, is going to have a field day with this guy because he has the measurables that the Jets want in their defensive linemen. Now it's just about teaching them how the Jets want to do it and unleash these guys.
Any defensive tackle is going to be happy playing next to a superstar in Quinnen Williams, and the Jets have that luxury here. Let's go back to the safety position. Chuck Clark, unfortunately, wasn't able to play last year. We know he's been here rehabbing consistently. People have talked about what a good dude he is, what kind of presence he brings to the locker room. So Tony Adams returns at free safety. He was under contract, a lot of uncertainty elsewhere as you started the offseason, but you don't even let Clark get to free agency. You re-sign him, and you're set up there.
I think with Clark, like, how many guys, I'm serious, like, I'm curious in your wealth of knowledge in terms of being in the league for a long time. Like, how many guys are as versatile as Chuck Clark? Because for those who don't know, Clark
is former Ravens flying here to the Jets, by the way.
Yeah, there are. Yeah, there are a lot of former Ravens flying up I-95 here. But with Clark, like, he's taken snaps at every single defensive position throughout his career, including like interior defensive line.
Right.
So I'm not asking you like who are players that have done that in the past, but players who are talented and so versatile. Like, I'm trying to think of guys over the last couple of years, and it's hard for me to name.
No, they asked him to do pretty much everything, and he was central command for the Ravens, and he's a guy who kept Kyle Hamilton off the field, which is crazy if you really think about it. That speaks to the transition in the National Football League, and that's why you should be excited about it. A guy like Kinlaw. I'm not comparing these guys as far as positions are concerned, but sometimes it takes players longer to transition to the NFL. There's familiarity here, and Kinlaw's coming off a career year with the 49ers. He reunites with a guy like Saleh, who Saleh has said in the past, a lot of guys come here and they end up having career years. Quentin Jefferson, great example, 6.5 sacks last year. He signs with Cleveland Browns. Jets get younger, much younger at the defensive tackle position. This defense will continue to be nasty and salty in 2024.
Salty.
I'll say so. I will say this before we get to Rod. Can you speak to what's out there? What's got your eye? What should we pay attention to? Because one of the needs that I talked about to start the offseason, the one position the Jets haven't addressed just yet has been receiver. We know they could add another running back down the line. You got Brees, of course, your bell cow, but Israel Abanikanda, a very promising a guy entering his second season. But what else do you think potentially could be out there here in free agency that we should continue to monitor?
Well, so just going on receiver alone, I think it was pretty quiet from the beginning. Like in the very early stages of the negotiating window, guys like Gabe Davis went, and the most recent one was Calvin Ridley, who got a lot of money from the Tennessee Titans.
Yes.
Now, in terms of wide receiver, I mean, we've talked about this. Maybe this year's class isn't, in terms of free agent class, isn't as active as a lot of people thought because of the depth in the draft class.
No doubt.
So if the Jets were to add people in free agency at wide receiver, the guys who still remain as of now 12:06, just making sure that who's available, guys like Marquise Hollywood Brown, Tyler Boyd, Odell Beckham Jr., who was it seemed like was definitely in the mix to becoming a Jet last season. And then there's other guys like if you go, I mean, there's Michael Thomas, who's obviously dealing with injuries as of late. I just think that if the Jets want to add a receiver, they can. I just keep coming back to that this receiving room is going to be in a better spot with Aaron Rodgers under center regardless. And I do think that we've spoke about this too. Like Alan Lazard, I think, will be a much better player in 2024 than he was last season for the Jets.
And Gibson and Brownlee give you depth as well. So, okay, let's go to tackle. Tyron Smith's out there.
Yep.
Trent Brown is out there.
David Bakhtiari's out there.
What do you think? Are you surprised at Smith being out there? And again, he would fill the void at left tackle. and obviously those 3 UFAs that the Jets had in-house, they're also out there in Becton, Brown, Billy Turner, and then a couple. We haven't talked about a number of UFAs, including Jordan Whitehead at the safety position going back to Tampa, but Ashton Davis remains out there as well. Justin Hardy, another guy, but let's focus on tackle.
Yeah, I don't know what the holdup is with Tyron Smith. I think it's kind of interesting. Obviously, I'm not privy to those conversations, but you would imagine a guy who's still playing at an elite level, even though there are durability questions, would sign rather quickly. And we're standing here, this is now almost 24 hours after officially the new league year begins, which means that teams have had at least 3 days to talk to Tyron Smith's representatives and try to work something out. Am I surprised that there's been little to no movement there? A little bit. I wonder what that means. However, I will say I think Joe Douglas will end up signing a tackle, period, because I think when you go into the draft,
we knew they were going to address offensive line, but they got a starting guard and you got a starting right tackle.
Yeah. But like you don't want to be pigeonholed in terms of the draft. So if the Jets do sign someone, like any one of the guys that you just mentioned, Tyron Smith, Bakhtiari, Trent Brown, even a guy like Donovan Smith, who I'm pretty sure is on record said something like it'd be cool to block for Aaron Rodgers. This is when he was with the Chiefs, like knowing that he was going to become a free agent. I think that there are just a lot of options there. And so if the Jets do sign one of those guys, then you go in the draft and you can be in a spot at 10 overall where you don't know how 1 through 9 is going to play out. So if you want to add a receiver, you go for it if they're available. You want to add a tackle, go for it.
Well, if you sign a tackle, a starting caliber tackle over the next couple days, maybe over the next few hours, I wonder if the play is to get another playmaker at the top of the draft. You can't go wrong adding another offensive lineman. Moses is interesting. Like, people are wondering, why did Baltimore part ways? I look at that as probably more of a cost-cutting future move because he signed through 2024. They knew maybe at the end of the day, is he going to be on this roster in 2025? So Joe Douglas makes a move that's very smart. Um, and you get a guy who's going to be starting at the right tackle spot. But as far as what he's done here early on in free agency, every possible avenue, RFAs, UFAs, street. We didn't mention Isaiah Oliver. A guy's going to come in and provide some depth in the secondary. He can play multiple positions as well. The Jets have the best cornerback group in football. He'll add to the mix, and it just is a depth piece. Trade. So he's done everything, UFAs, but they're not done it. And they also have flexibility in whatever move that they make moving forward. It sets it up for an interesting spot. Remember, he told us in Indianapolis not too long ago that bottom line is, I like where we're at. Now we're kind of seeing the picture unfold before us.
Yeah, I think that obviously free agency crystallizes the draft. The one team that's actually on the Jets schedule for 2024 that I think, based on their free agent moves, kind of paints their picture a little clearer in the draft is Tennessee. You think about, they have DeAndre Hopkins. They just added Calvin Ridley. They already have Traylon Burks.
So you got him going tackle. And
I don't know
you're
what
wondering who it is.
So I don't know what their defense is looking like. But to me, my uneducated opinion is that they would likely go tackle or defense. And they're sitting there at 7. Last year, under the same regime, they drafted Peter Skoronski in the first round, and he's playing guard for them. Could they want to add someone to protect Will Levis? Or, depending on, like, if there's a quarterback available, would they be open to trading back if someone wants to trade up? That's the team that I kind of have circled right here based on their free agency moves that impact the Jets come draft time.
But even if they did, Fashanu might be on the table, and one of those top 3 receivers might be on the table.
Exactly, which is why it all comes full circle to me, because if the Jets do sign one of these tackles we've talked about, you're in a good spot where let's say, for the sake of this conversation, if the Jets didn't sign one of those tackles, then all of a sudden you're worried Tennessee's drafting a guy, and then maybe you have to figure it out what your solution is at tackle afterwards.
I thought going in, you're going to get a starting tackle and you're going to get a starting guard in free agency. You've already done that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe one more is in play, and this line looks completely different again. But one guy is going to be lining up behind the offensive line in the spring and throughout the preseason. Tyrod Taylor, hopefully he's not taking too many regular season snaps, but we had an opportunity to talk to him. For myself and Ethan, we're going to keep you updated. Remember, our apologies in advance because this was taped 12:30 Thursday. Our free agency reset at this point. Joe Douglas has been a busy man, and I can tell you right now, the hall is buzzing down there right now. Hey, so how does it feel, Tyrod, to embark on a journey with your 7th NFL team now?
It's a blessing. Each team or each city has been unique in its own. I've learned a lot, and I've grown as a person, as a player, and thankful for this opportunity I have here.
What did you think when the season ended with the Giants? What was ahead for you?
Truly, I honestly didn't know. Finished off on a good foot, but yeah, you never know. The league changes day to day, week to week. So you really have to be at peace about what you put on the field. And for me, I'm a believer. So I think that God's timing is everything. So he'll find the right steps in the right direction for you, and I just trust him.
You've been through this before. No stranger to the process. What was it like this time around?
Wasn't that bad, actually. Obviously, listening to your agent, you're weighing out different options. You're trying to see what makes the best, what makes the most sense. And ultimately, thought this was a great fit. Fortunately, I don't have to move places, but excited about this journey here with the Jets. I have a talented roster, a lot of players that I respect from playing or just knowing along the years, and excited to get to work with this group of guys.
You just touched upon it a little bit, but money talks. We know that. You got to make a living. But what made the Jets attractive to you?
You look at the roster, very talented roster. I mean, obviously some injuries last year that you can't control, but I believe everything is in-house to be able to achieve what every NFL team is trying to achieve, which is a Super Bowl. It's early right now, obviously. You never want to get into that. It's a lot of steps they got to get to that. But I believe that this team is capable of achieving that goal with the right work that's put in.
What do you see from them offensively?
Explosive group.
Yeah.
Wide receivers, they compete their butts off, makes contested catches, knows how to stretch the field, and just explosive plays.
Well, specifically, I wanted to ask you about guys like Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Garrett as well as Breece. Two fast guys, two electric guys, get the balls in their hand, and it could be a big play waiting to happen.
What's the mindset for you now at this point in your career? Entering year 14, you're joining a team with the future Hall of Famer here in Aaron Rodgers coming back from the Achilles. You guys have a lot of combined experience when you're talking about being in that room together.
Yeah, obviously being able to assist Aaron at any capacity, but also staying ready for the opportunity if it presents itself. While at the same time being able to offer my leadership and my knowledge that I've accumulated over the years to the younger guys within the locker room. My goal is to just help at any capacity that I can.
Over the years, what kind of interactions maybe have you had with Aaron, and how much do you appreciate his game?
I appreciate his game. I've said this before. He ranks very high on my list of quarterbacks. One of my faves. I haven't had a lot of interaction other than pregame conversations, post-game conversations, but I have a ton of respect for Aaron. Big fan of his games and looking forward to being able to learn from him and working alongside him.
Why a big fan of his game?
Just the way he carries himself. On the field, obviously in my opinion, one of the best passers of the football that the NFL has seen. And not necessarily the prototype that you see. A lot of these guys that I was kind of conditioned to growing up, that you had to be a certain height, you had to fit a certain build. He's kind of broke that mold, and he plays the game the right way.
How do you break that mold when you talk about Aaron?
Well, when I say that, I mean not from when I first came into the league, I was told that I was too short.
Yeah,
I'm 6'1". There's plenty of guys that have came after me. But I think it also starts with Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, not being the 6'4", the 6'5", stationary guy. Like, can be as mobile as you need to, but also throw from the pocket, make plays, extend plays as well too. Like I said, just big fan of his.
How have you been able to do it? Because you were a 6th-round draft pick out of Tech,
Yeah.
who had to wait his turn to actually get that first start in the National Football League, where when you look at your resume now, most of your starts, of course, came with the Jets' division rival, the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, just staying committed to the process. My time in Baltimore, obviously I didn't get a chance to play as much as I want, but I had a chance to learn from a veteran group of guys. I walked into a locker room with Ray Lewis, Ed Reed. Flacco wasn't necessarily a veteran at the time, but I learned a lot from Flacco. Anquan Bolden, a lot of friends that I still have to this day. But I look back on that time, and it was those 4 years prepared me for the opportunity that I had in Buffalo. And from there, just like I said, staying committed, not necessarily getting discouraged about the downs of an NFL season or of a career, but just going out and playing at a high level whenever the opportunity presented itself.
Man, you're so level-headed, but when you finally had the opportunity to get a start, when you're out there with the Bills, and we were just talking about it before we started recording, what do you think about the play call Because here you are, you're getting your first start in the NFL, and they're saying, well, actually, we're going to line you up as a decoy on that first play at receiver.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that. I never spoke on that. But I also, it's part of the game.
Yeah.
We try to throw a wildcat formation out there to confuse the defense. Ultimately, we won the game, and that's really what matters. Is winning, and that's really what my mindset is. I mean, stats, yeah, they matter to the outside, but for me, it's about wins. And ultimately, we won that game against the Colts, and it was a great feeling. And it, like you said, it sparked my career as a starter, and I'm very thankful for that time.
What makes for a successful quarterback in the National Football League? Because you said you're not a big numbers guy because you're interested in winning and losing. But with that being said, I think one of the most impressive ratios that you've had throughout your career is touchdown to interceptions.
Yes.
And now you're joining forces with a guy like Rodgers, #1 in NFL history, touchdown interception ratio.
Yes, obviously protecting the ball gives your team the best chance to go out there and win. From a quarterback, you have to be a leader. You have to be able to perform under pressure. And you have to be a guy that the team, coaches, everyone, organization depends on and can count on in crunch time. On the field, as a person, you have to be truly a dependable person. And there's other factors that play into quarterback play, but I think those three speak out to me.
How has your game changed over time from the guy who came out as a Hokie and starting with the Ravens and now?
I think if anything, I've just got better at the things that I do. Obviously, I've always been mobile. I've always been able to extend plays, never been afraid to push the ball down the field. The game has changed from when I first came into the league, not to get too deep into it, but
Oh, I like this.
you see more of a spread offense now. You see more, obviously, air attacks. It was pretty balanced early on in my career as far as just offensive approaches. But, yeah, I think I've just had a chance to grow and get more comfortable with the things that I do and the things that I've done. And I'm looking forward to still building and sharpening those tools and just continue to keep growing as a player. I think each year, obviously, you look back at the things that you've done good, and you want to build on those, but you also want to attack the weaknesses and what you could have done better. And quarterbacks, each year you have to find ways to get better. And it starts with self-reflection and looking yourself in the mirror.
How hard is that to start anew? Because I don't know if a lot of people could do what you've done throughout your career in terms of going to a new team and a new organization and picking up and then going to another team and another organization.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's too hard, but I think it really goes back to what I said about staying committed. As a young kid, Hampton, Virginia, having goals of getting to this level, you don't take anything for granted. You challenge yourself to be better, and ultimately, you have the say-so in that. I mean, you can go about the day, you can look at just being in the NFL, and you could just be happy with that. But I'm always challenging myself to be better as a person and as a player, and that's just who I am. And I take those challenges personally, and I attack them daily and put the work behind it.
What do you attribute to your upbringing? You just talked about Hampton.
Yeah.
As far as what you learned there and what you carry with you.
Yeah, I'm an only child, so I spent a lot of time with my parents, but I also spent a lot of time playing sports, AAU basketball, football, baseball, ran track, did just a little bit of everything. But I also was fortunate to grow up watching Allen Iverson, Michael Vick, Ronald Carey, Aaron Brooks, a lot of names from just guys from my hometown or the city over or the next city over. And trying to write my own story, trying to give something to a young kid back in Hampton Roads, something to look up to. So yeah, I had role models, but I'm also trying to create that opportunity for the next generation as well too.
How influential was Mike Vick with you in terms of maybe his guidance along the way. And he's a guy who had to stop here later on in his career.
Yeah, I learned a lot from Mike. We didn't meet until I got to college. I grew up knowing Ronald Curry very closely, Allen Iverson very closely, and I watched Mike, but I didn't meet him until I got to school. But he's helped me along the way, as well as those other guys as well. Aaron Brooks, Allen Iverson, Ronald Curry. I thank them for my success, but I also just thank them for being who they are and helping me throughout this journey. Someone that I could lean on, and those people I could call any day and they pick up the phone and offer anything, whether it's just about life or about sports. They'll offer any advice or anything they have to give to me.
The longer you're in the league, how small does it become? Because you mentioned Ronald Curry a couple times now. He's the Buffalo Bills.
Buffalo. I mean, even
quarterbacks coach.
Even last year, our offensive coordinator, Mike Kafka, we joked about it all the time. He was drafted the year before me.
Yeah.
So the longer that you stay in it, it definitely gets smaller. You see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of people that you've crossed paths with somewhere. But that's the beauty of this business. It's a relationship business. Definitely you don't have to, but I think when you treat people the right way, that lasts, and that memory goes a long way for a lot of people.
Give us a scouting report, what you're at this point in your career. Throughout the years, you've always been accurate at that long ball, and you talked about the ability to extend as well.
Yeah. I think I spoke to it. Like you said, obviously accurate, deep ball passer, still mobile and can extend plays. I think the true definition of a dual threat quarterback.
Defensively, you've gone against these guys.
Very tough.
Okay, so what's it like behind center lining up against this defense?
It's tough. They create challenges, especially up front, but on the back end as well too. We have a fast defense on the back end and a group of guys up front that can get after it. Linebacker position, probably one of the best duos in the league, and just have a lot of respect for the guys on this defense.
So you're part of this free agency class, and I'm going to let you get going here in a second. What do you think about some of these big guys coming up in front of you? And John Simpson walking in. You got Morgan Moses coming on board, quarterback's best friend, right?
Yeah, I'm excited. We spent some time this morning, but I'm excited to be able to play with these guys.
And lastly, staying in New York. You don't have to pack the bags or anything, huh?
Not at all. It's the best city.
Tyrod, appreciate your time.
Thank you.